All right, good morning and welcome to Webinar Wednesday, NHAF's virtual series specifically designed for Nebraska communities and housing partners. Today, we're discussing the Nebraska Homeowner Assistance Fund. I'm Joe Spitzen, Program and Education Coordinator at the Nebraska Investment Finance Authority. Our presenters today are Impala Cruz, Sam Homan, and Scott Mertz. Also joining us is NHAF's John Turner, who's behind the scenes answering questions and monitoring the chat. If you have questions for our speakers, please use Zoom's question feature, not the chat, to input your questions, and we'll hold those until after the presentations. Feel free to use the chat for your own discussion and questions for each other, and the question feature for anything you'd like me to ask the presenters on camera. If you'd prefer to ask your own question out loud, just let us know in your question and we can unmute you. We're here to talk about homeowner assistance, but I'd like to first remind everybody that the state of Nebraska's emergency rental assistance program is drawing to a close. Tenants can receive assistance for rent and utilities through December 2022, but applications must be received no later than September 9th, 2022 at coronavirus.nebraska.gov. If you have any questions or need assistance, please reach out to us at era@nifa.org. So thanks again for attending, and let's get started. Our first speaker today is Impala Cruz. Impala is NHAF's Homeowner Assistance Fund Program Manager. She is our expert in residents living and breathing NHAF all day, every day. All right, take it away, Impala.
Thank you. That's actually a very accurate introduction, so thank you very much. Okay, I'm going to share my screen.
Looks good.
Looks good. Okay, thank you. Okay, so NHAF actually started launching February 1st of this year, and we received our Treasury guidance slightly before that. So in preparation, we are ready to launch. Our announcement came from Governor Ricketts and our Executive Director, Shannon, here at NHAF to let everyone know in the Nebraska community that the program has launched and that the application portal was open. And getting started here, kind of the gist of what the Homeowner Assistance Fund is. It's a rescue plan under ARPA, and it's to help those that are facing financial hardships for their mortgage or property taxes that are pandemic related to COVID-19. In total, the U.S. Treasury Department awarded the United States territories and tribal entities $9.9 billion in total funding, and it was based and allocated by population. So Nebraska was awarded specifically $50 million in order to help homeowners here in the state. What it looks like is that we're trying to help those that have a primary residency in Nebraska. They have to have been facing a financial hardship on or after January 21st due to the coronavirus pandemic. And there are income limits. There are other eligibility requirements that we don't exactly put out there, but we are internally looking at them. And I can get into that a little bit later. The hardship that we're kind of looking at focusing on is either a reduction in income, and that can be from a layoff, it could be from a reduction of hours, just complete job loss altogether, maybe one provider in the home lost income, or it could be an increase in living expenses. Some of the most common things that we're seeing are families taking on other family members that were also affected to coronavirus, so their household size is going up, or maybe they have more medical debt related to coronavirus. And then US Treasury really opened up the scope to be able to help a lot of homeowners in the United States. However, Nebraska zeroed in and had a real focus on certain things. So we really wanted to start that first round of helping those that are past due or defaulted on their mortgage. We also wanted to offer them some other types of assistance that I'm going to get to in a few slides, or the next slide. We also are trying to prevent, postpone, stop any types of foreclosure that's happening and displacement of any of those homeowners as well. And again, that doesn't just fall under their mortgage, it could be property tax related also. So what we did is we allocated our $50 million into 3 buckets, and part of that was administrative costs, but the rest of it we put into 3 buckets that include reinstatement assistance, payment assistance, and property assistance. And what that reinstatement bucket looks like is that's all the funds that we're using to cure a delinquency and bring a homeowner current so that they are no longer past due. That payment assistance piece is actually a future mortgage payment assistance. And what we're doing with that is that we are helping homeowners pay up to 6 months of their mortgage in advance once their delinquency is cured. At this present time, they do have to be past due in order to qualify. And that was one of those eligibility requirements that we're not exactly broadcasting to everyone, but they do have to be past due to get the payment assistance for future payments going forward. And then we also offer property assistance. And that is what that looks like is we'll help with condominium and HOA fees that might be past due homeowners insurance, past due property taxes. And then there are a few other things that we're looking at, but we can touch base on that when I talk about the referral process a little bit more. It says here that there's a combined total of assistance for these buckets of assistance of $30,000. I do have exciting news to share. On Monday, we got approval from the state to up this aggregate total amount from $30,000 to $40,000. And I think we're going to be able to help so many more homeowners, because if you look at when the pandemic started to now, they could very well have surpassed that $30,000 mark. We are also not just limiting this to the normal lender mortgages. We are also helping those that may be seller financed or have that private mortgage going on. We also have some applicants that might have a mortgage but don't have their insurance or property taxes escrowed into that mortgage. So we can help out in several different areas of these buckets. So there is a thing for our program. There's eligibility requirements. There are some things that are just cut and dry for us to be able to approve somebody right away. And what happens is they go into this type of referral process. And there are certain stipulations or scenarios for why somebody might get referred. And a referral doesn't mean that they're automatically denied or anything like that. It just means that we need NHAF here. We need a little bit more assistance. And that's where our Legal Aid of Nebraska comes in and our housing counselors that we're partnered with. So some examples, and again, I'm not going to get into this too crazy much because the other panelists can speak more to this. But for example, one of our requirements is that there is some type of income coming into the household. So if an applicant and their co-applicant say they have no source of income, we're not denying them necessarily, but we feel that they would be better suited to go to a housing counseling agency and have some type of counseling and budgeting happen so that they would be a better candidate for HAF, because we don't want to just put them aside and say deny. We do ultimately want to help them, but make sure that it's a sustainable process for them afterwards. And then for the referral for Legal Aid of Nebraska, we do have some applicants that are in a bankruptcy status, and NHAF does wish to help those people. We just want to make sure that there's no adverse actions if HAF funds are going to be used to pay that. And then we're also helping resolve tax liens that are associated with the mortgage. We do have a website. It's nebraskahaf.com, and there they can apply. There is a 6-question pre-screen eligibility that they must go through. And we're just kind of trying to weed out anybody that's like, this program is really not for you. So some of those questions that they're going to potentially get through is your primary residence in Nebraska? Because if it's not, NHAF obviously cannot help. Were they financially impacted by COVID-19? We are gathering data because, like I said, delinquency is a requirement at this point in time. So it's going to ask, are you past due on your mortgage, property taxes, HOAs, things like that? Or if that doesn't fit your need, do you need help with removing property tax liens? That way they can get allowed into the program. And for them to be able to apply, it's pretty much the most friendly online application portal I've dealt with personally. But what we ask is for a valid photo identification that can include anything from driver's license, passport, just something that's valid. We do need a mortgage statement. We ask for the most current one, preferably, so that we can determine that they are past due. We do need a secondary form of property verification, and we're asking for utility bills or a phone bill just to prove that it is a a primary homeowner residency, so we could try to mitigate any rental or fraud things that might occur. We are looking at income, and really will accept anything. US Treasury was very clear that they want income to be as relaxed as possible, and they want as many homeowners in the US to be approved as possible. Other documents to satisfy requirements. The main things that I'm seeing is if somebody's in a loan modification, we've been asking for those just to understand if they still are currently past due. We've had a lot of situations where couples have divorced, or maybe there's a parent and a child that bought the house together. So we just want to get a better understanding of why might there be two people on this property, on this mortgage loan statement, but only one person is living in the household, and we are only asked to be looking at one person's income. This is kind of a snapshot of that website. Like I said, there are some pre-screen, pre-qualification questions to go through. And then there's those common questions, required documents that I just went through. There's an option to report fraud, and there's a resources page. There's also a tutorial of how somebody can apply. It's called Counselor Direct is the platform that we're using. We are partnered with Nelnet here in Nebraska to handle our call center, and that number several times, and I'll repeat it, is 844-565-7146. And we have people to handle English and Spanish calls at this moment. And this is that pre-qualification I was talking about that they will get through. And then they simply create an account, and then they go through very simple information, just the basic demographic and where you live, a couple questions about their loan and financial situation. And then we just have them complete and sign self-attestation saying that they are truly impacted by COVID. This truly is their income. We're basically asking them to self-certify everything, which was more guidance provided by US Treasury. Let's see. Okay, we also have a bunch of media toolkit information, and that is in email forms. We have flyers. I even have yard signs in my office as we speak. And those are available in several languages. We've partnered with the Asian Cultural and Community Center, who has translated the Karen, Vietnamese, and Arabic languages for us. And then we also have English, Spanish, and I think there's a few other that I can't remember off the top of my head, but we're really trying to market to everybody. The real goal that US Treasury was trying to say is that we understand there's a need for that homeowner assistance to be paid. We know that there's a lot of help that is needed. We really wanted to target in on those that are socially disadvantaged groups first, and that was their guidance. And socially disadvantaged groups are going to include those that are maybe living in a rural area. We have census tract information that we can narrow down to the zip code where the average median income might be below that 100% mark. So focusing on them. We're also focusing on race and ethnicity targeting, or those that might not, English might not be their primary language in that specific area. So that's kind of our priority of how we are processing applications and how those that are getting funded first are falling. And then the highest priority are those that are having an active foreclosure or might have a sale scheduled. We're really doing our best to try to get in there and stop any of that from happening. We're partnered with over 100 lenders right now, and they are basically signing an agreement with Nebraska that they are going to participate and accept these HAF funds and apply them. And there's just a quick exchange of information going on there. We send payments to our mortgage lenders electronically. And then for the remaining things like HOA, property tax, we're sending a check, and the state of Nebraska is handling all of those. There's been, well, I think right now today, I should have checked this morning, sorry, we're approaching that 4,000 mark in applications, and that is unique households that have applied. We have funded over 15% of our 40 million that is allocated, and that's roughly over 6.6 million. And if you visit our website, there's the resources page. There's a pretty little map there, and it will allow you to see funds dispersed by program, by total, how many applications there are. You can narrow it down and filter by county, how many applications have gone through there. And if it's okay, Joe, I wanted to just share what that was, but that's outside the slideshow. Is that okay?
Sure.
Okay.
Yeah.
1 second. Can you still see that?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, very good. Okay, so like I said, the funds dispersed, this is for a total of programs. I like going here just for the giant number. This is updated from the previous day, so it doesn't include anything I've done today, but it is 6.6 million when I go into reservations. We have an applications by county here. I don't know if it's any surprise to anybody, but Douglas, Lancaster, and Sarpy have the most volume when it comes to applications submitted. And the last time I checked, we had 76 counties out of the, I think there's 92 total that have submitted applications. So we really are reaching, our media efforts are working. We're getting to the most rural communities there are. Some of our top servicers paid. I always like looking at this chart. It's fascinating to me, but US Bank is one of the, it is the top one. And then First National Bank, Wells Fargo, Freedom. So what that means is that we're sending the most money to those particular lenders. Those are some pretty big names out there, of course. So I don't know if that's a surprise for anybody that those are who the types of lenders that we are paying. But it's always fascinating to me, the dollar amount spent there. And then I wanted to show you guys that HAF dashboard. Take a second to load, sorry. Okay. So this is, again, that map showing you can zero in and really focus on a certain county. I'm hovered over Lancaster County. It'll tell you how many applications and the average payment for that. You can also filter by property tax. That's probably the bucket I've spent the least amount of money in, but there's still a lot has been paid. I wanted to also kind of end with sharing some of the really good news that has happened this week. I mentioned that we got approval from upping the aggregate amount from $30,000 to $40,000. We've also had the state's blessing that we can start helping those that may not be past due, but the caveat is they must have a deferred balance, and that deferred balance must have came through that COVID time period of January 2021 to present. Because what we were finding in our review is that so many people weren't past due, but they did have a nice chunk of deferred balance, and they did the loan modification with their lender to be brought current. And a lot of it was because they didn't know how soon HAF was going to launch, or they didn't know how long it was going to take to get approved. And, just that kind of worrisome part of the homeowner. And I do want to stress that we always encourage the homeowners to explore loss mitigation through their lender first and use HAF as kind of a last resort, but we would never turn anybody down that hadn't explored loss mitigation through their lender. And then another big change coming is that we're going to open we're putting it under property assistance, but we're going to open that up to be able to help aid and pay for utilities and internet broadband services. I don't have exact figures of what that looks like in front of me, but we plan on submitting our Treasury addendum plan changes this week or early next week. So those should be implemented hopefully within the next 30 days. There are some system and application platform enhancements that do have to go underway, but we're really excited. our income guidelines are still going to be the same. I know that Nebraska has a LIHEAP program available, and not everybody qualifies under those more conservative income requirements. So since ours are more relaxed, we're really opening it up for everybody. We are still requiring that they be homeowners and provide proof of primary residence and homeownership for that purpose. And then we're just kind of moving some funds around. We're finding that less people are past due than when we originally pulled our data. So we're stealing some of our money that we've allocated for our reinstatement bucket and moving it over to that future payment assistance bucket, because they can get 6 months or up to 6 months of future mortgage payments, and they might only be 1 month past due. So there's just some reallocation of funds happening there. But that's kind of the Reader's Digest version of it all. I know I threw a lot of information out there, and I also left off a lot of information too, and not because I don't want to be transparent. It's just a lot to take in, and Sam and Scott are going to be the subject matter experts in that referral process for things that go to them. Do you want to open it up to questions now, Joe, or do you want to wait till?
We'll do all questions together at the very end. Thank you for your presentation and your timely Reader's Digest joke.
People understood that good.
All right, next up is Sam Holman. Sam is the CEO of Credit Advisors Foundation, is here to share with us the perspective of a housing counselor. All yours, Sam.
Hi. Hi, everyone. Yes, I am with Credit Advisors Foundation. I'm going to kind of do my screen share here. I think. Great. Okay. So can you see it?
Yes, ma'am. Okay,
awesome. Thank you. So Credit Advisors Foundation, we are one of the housing counseling organizations that NHAF works with. And our goal as an organization is to make sure that everyone has economic inclusion and vitality. And in order to do that, we offer a lot of different programs, not just housing counseling. We have credit counseling, bankruptcy counseling, representative payee services, debt management plans. We actually help clients in all 50 states. We just are headquartered here in Nebraska. We have 3 physical locations in Nebraska, Iowa, and Arizona. We have 4 languages spoken on staff, but we can handle any language with an interpreter. And then we are accredited, certified, licensed, all the bells and whistles you would need. I like to start with sort of a success story. And this actually was our first HAF client. It was not a couple that had been referred through the NHAF program so much as when they came to us, we knew that HAF was going to be an option for them. So the Havershams, this is a fictional name, but I'm a big fan of Caddyshack, so I use the name Haversham. In any case, they were in their 90s. This was a couple. They were, for the most part, in good health. He was a financial professional, still working. They had savings, a good income mix, and so you wonder what possibly could go wrong with their situation and their housing situation. Publishers Clearinghouse called them during COVID, and the Publishers Clearinghouse scam was very prevalent, particularly for the elderly during COVID, because they knew these people, for the most part, were home and were lonely and were isolated. So they could engage them in very long conversations. In any case, in a matter of months, they had cleared out all of their savings, maxed out their credit cards, and took out a second mortgage. So they were in a world of hurt. The other thing was bank tellers are actually, and bankers are very trained to handle these situations. The problem was most bank lobbies were closed. And so a lot of this took place electronically. By the time the couple actually got into a bank and the bank teller flagged it, they did call the children. They got a hold of the daughter of this couple, and they panicked, called us, and we went through their finances, and it was a big mess. They were over a month past due on their mortgage. And they were about to hit a second month. And when we spoke to them about the HAF program, their first question was, well, this isn't COVID related. We had heard about that program, but we don't think we qualify. And so I think one big takeaway from today is you really have to question what is COVID related and what was a COVID impact, because certainly in their case, we felt strongly that there was a COVID impact had they not been isolated, had they been able to go into their bank, had they been able to have more access to their direct access to their children. This probably would not have happened. In any case, NHAF funded them. They were able to work with a bankruptcy attorney that we referred them to on the credit cards. And long story short, they are living in their home. And, you know, that's a big kudos to NIFA and this program, because one other little twist to this thing, and my counselors know to look for this. It was the first question we asked. We didn't ask how far behind they were. We asked, had they been diagnosed with Alzheimer's or dementia? Because the first thing to go is not your memory, it's your ability to handle your finances. So when you see an elderly person who's making not the best financial decisions, get in to see a doctor. So the gentleman was diagnosed, and so life is much better for them now than it was a couple months ago. If I go into, like I said, I just want to start with a success story. So that was great. The three buckets that we see that NIFA has, from our perspective, is the people who are getting denied, the people who are getting awarded, and then the people who are referred to counseling. We don't see the people who are denied and awarded, which Impala and NIFA know that I get on my soapbox that I feel everybody should have to go through counseling, especially those that are awarded. But I'll talk about that a little bit more in a minute. So what we're seeing that ends up getting referred to counselor, these fall into two buckets. These are people who have no income, in which case NIFA has a legitimate concern whether if they fund their arrearage, whether they're going to be able to continue to afford their mortgage. Or we also are referred people who are $30,000 in arrears. I hope you keep it at that level, even though you're increasing it to 40,000 Impala. So, but again, NIFA in those situations have a legitimate concern that while $30,000 in arrears, if you're over that, how are you going to make up the additional amount? And for us, it just comes down to budgeting and figuring out affordability for these individuals. And part of NIFA's process is not creating a budget. That's not their job. And so that's where we come in, is really to look at the total financial picture. So in terms of the people who come in that are referred to us and have no income, they roughly fall into these categories, but 20% actually do have an income, but they felt their application looked stronger if they didn't report it. And so we encourage them, no, that actually makes your application look worse. So please report your income. About another 50% are actively looking for employment or have secured employment. So we sometimes feel like we're, employment counselors in a sense, because we're checking with them to make sure that their situation, that they're actively seeking employment, but that they're also going to end up in a employment situation that will allow them to afford the mortgage. And I have an example later where why that's important. About 5% their situation has changed where they're unable or unwilling to seek employment. Maybe they have maybe they're disabled or have become disabled. I know we recently worked with Legal Aid and Scott when we referred somebody who was not getting their disability in a timely fashion. And so Legal Aid helped them out there. And then about 5% just outright refuse counseling. They don't want to engage in those sort of discussions. So again, to reiterate, we honestly feel that everyone, whether they're funded, unfunded, over $30,000 in arrearage, just everyone should be referred to counseling. And that's because if counselors are the first line of defense in this process, we have a lot of tools, a lot of experience. We're dealing with mortgage servicers all the time. We understand that affordability is at the basis of it, that budget, and whether this is going to work long term for them is really important. We can help the person actually apply, put those packages together to NYFA to make it a great package. This, at the end of the day, it gives the homeowner a lot of options. And the two biggest options that they're going to have are obviously half, but there's also modifications. And I'm going to discuss that for a little bit, because in our line of work as housing counselors, there are a lot of discussions regarding how do you maximize help and assistance for people who are behind on their mortgages. Do you apply for half first? Do you apply for a mortgage modification first? Which one do you do? In general, as professionals, and just as a note from Treasury says that half is it's a last resort program. So in other words, consumers need to be looking first at modifications and forbearances and those things. And if they don't have a counselor pointing them out to them, nobody wakes up and says, oh, I think I need a forbearance today. Most of them don't even understand what that is. And so if they can get to a housing counselor, then we go through those options. We determine, how much have they filed a forbearance, how long is left on it. Can a modification work for them? Who is their servicer? We have lots of experiences with the servicers. We know who's tough, who's not tough, who's hard to get a hold of, how you get a hold of them. Maybe we have like a little, everyone has sort of their secret contact at some of these larger organizations where they know somebody who answers their phone. So these are all options that can be lost if somebody doesn't seek counseling first. So if we are trying to determine whether we're going to do a half versus a modification, first thing you need to look at was the pre-pandemic payment on their mortgage affordable? If it is affordable, great, let's do the half in most cases, because the half is going to fix your default and it's going to bring you current. Now, there are cons which you need to be aware of. If their financial situation changes, the modification, or the half may not fix the affordability issue. And if you apply half funds first, the servicer will probably say you're no longer eligible for a modification because now you're current. If the pre-pandemic payments are not affordable, then modification is the best choice, because the pros are you're going to go current within 3 payments and you're going to create long-term affordability. A modification is going to take the arrearage, put it on the end. They're going to lengthen those payments, but reduce the payment for you as well. So that makes it more affordable. The cons, and we have an example of this, is you may no longer qualify for a half. The half program requires that you be in arrearage, and then you lose that opportunity. And it's sort of, people don't like the idea that there was money left on the table, let's just say. A modification costs the consumer a lot more in the long run, because you are tacking that on the back end, that arrearage. You're also having to pay that, and you are lengthening the time of that loan. Modifications are not easy depending upon the servicer. They can take a really long time to get, which is why a counselor is going to look to make sure you exhausted your forbearance options first, because you would hate to have a foreclosure happen while you're waiting for your modification. And if you are waiting for your foreclosure if you're waiting for your modification, in certain states, the half funds have actually run out while people were waiting for their modification. So then they unfortunately lost both options. So we pretty much, if somebody's referred to us and they're over $30,000, and now, thanks Impella, 40,000, that's fantastic. But we're going to do that same pre-pandemic affordability analysis that we just did, whether it's affordable before or after. But we're also going to now look at, if you get that modification, now what do we have to look at? So the modification itself, for some people, it's still not affordable. And then you are stuck with no other option but a home sale. If post-modification is affordable, great. Now, the absolute best thing you can get for a client is if you can do both the half and the modification, but it requires absolutely perfect timing, because most lenders won't do the modification unless you're behind, but half won't happen unless you're behind. So if you have somebody over the half limit, it works relatively easy because you're going to have you're going to apply the half up to the 30,000 or up to the 40,000, and then you can take the remainder of the arrearage. But let's say your arrearage is less than the 30 or 40, then it gets very complicated. But a good housing counselor can make magic happen, and we work to try to get people to maximize both of them. So we do have an example of a situation where this came up, and unfortunately it did not have a great outcome. This was Dottie, another fictional name. She was in her late 50s, and she actually was unique in that she was making great income during COVID. She had a COVID related job, and she was able to purchase her own home. But shortly after COVID sort of waned, she was laid off. She was referred to us because she had no income when she applied for half. The problem was she applied for half and had this expectation that this money was a lock and it was going to come in. And so when we were looking at her financials, we were counseling on her that the post half money, it still wouldn't be affordable for her because her income was going to be substantially decreased without all the overtime. And then she went in to get a second opinion, so to say, from her banker, who told her that the bank would not work with her unless she was current. So she cleared out her savings and made a payment, brought herself current, and then she got knocked out of the HAF program. So this is why it's really important, again, to work with a housing counselor, because they know that these sort of things happen, and they're really going to watch the timing of this. So again, we would still like to say that there are lots of ways housing counselors can help, even people who are funded, who have been brought current, because we're going to check that affordability. We're going to make sure they stay on track. We're going to look for other money management issues. We've got lots of people who have now spent 18 to 24 months not having to make a student loan payment. And those student loan payments are now coming back for a lot of people. So we're going to look at issues like that. We're going to find solutions for other creditors. For people who are denied, we're going to do kind of the same analysis, but their options obviously are going to be a bit different. Do they have refinancing options, bankruptcy? We're going to make sure that they're accounting for their insurance and taxes. The denied people, the biggest chunk outside of, as Impala mentioned, having a home in Nebraska or an ID, it's people who are over income. And I will tell you, the people who are over income need counseling as much as anybody. It's housing issues hit everyone. And the last thing we need are people who can afford housing, moderate housing, competing with those in those lower income levels. It's already hard enough to get a house out there. So bottom line, every HAF applicant can benefit from housing counseling. I wanted to throw this up because I found this to be super interesting. I gave this similar talk at the annual convention, or the annual NIFA conference. And when I first presented this, the map on the left-hand side with the more pink, that was the status of the HAF programs. And the map on the right is the one currently as of yesterday. And the interesting thing is now we've got most of the HAF programs online, but Nebraska's came on at a great time. So they weren't behind like some of the other states. But I think the one that stood out, and we work with HAF programs in a lot of states, not just Nebraska, which maybe is why I find this fascinating. But in any case, Illinois was the one that stood out to me the most, because just 4 months ago, they were only a preliminary information available, meaning their HAF program wasn't open. And yesterday, as of yesterday, it was closed. So some of these states are flying through their money very, very quickly. Any case, overall, I think Nebraska is doing a phenomenal job, much better than the other states. Impala is insanely good at what she does and so accessible, which makes our ability to do those those modification and HAF overlays very easy, because we can stay in contact with the state. The only reason they don't get an A+ is because I wish they would refer more people to housing counseling.
That's fair.
All right, Impala, I guess I expect you to work on some extra credit to get us up to that A.
I know, I will.
All right, thank you, Sam. Finally, we have Scott Mertz. Scott is an attorney serving as the Housing Justice Project Director at Legal Aid of Nebraska. NHAF has been working extremely closely with his office on both NHAF and the Rental Assistance Program. All right, you're up, Scott.
Thank you, Joe, and thank you to Sam and Paul. That was a lot of really great information, really informative to me as well. A couple of things I just want to do with my time today is just give a little bit of an overview of what Legal Aid of Nebraska does, and then specifically what we are doing with the HAF program and the legal services that we're trying to offer to all of the HAF eligible clients to ensure that they can benefit from this program. So, and I see John put a link on the chat for anybody who wants further information than I am providing right now and wants to potentially apply, refer somebody or apply for Legal Aid of Nebraska services. You can get some more information on the website. And I think a lot of the organizations on the call today might even have direct lines of referrals directly to our access line. And if you don't or are interested, do reach out, and we can make sure that your organization has a potential warm handoff for anybody that you're working with that you think would benefit from Legal Aid of Nebraska services. So what is Legal Aid of Nebraska? So we are the both largest but also only nonprofit law firm that is statewide here in Nebraska, offering free legal assistance for civil services to Nebraska citizens. People might understand we have a constitutional right to an attorney in a criminal matter in which you're facing jail time. In those situations, if you cannot afford an attorney, Constitution says you shall be appointed one. The Constitution does not say that for a myriad of other legal issues in which people really need an attorney. Legal Aid Nebraska really seeks to fill in that gap. And we do so by focusing on four priority areas. One, family law, domestic cases. Our priority there is really with domestic violence situations, because we don't have the capacity to provide a free attorney for everybody who needs an attorney in a family law setting, but we want to prioritize in those very serious situations where there is domestic violence, that everybody who needs an attorney has access one, to get those protection orders, to get a divorce, to get custody of your child, if there's any child support matters that are still being litigated. Income and benefits, basically employment and public assistance. If someone's in need of or being terminated from programs like the Social Security program was prominently, state benefits like Medicaid, SNAP, unemployment benefits, we want to make sure there are no barriers. Anybody who should be getting those benefits who is low income will have access to them, so that individuals have the income necessary to meet a basic standard of living if they cannot work. Debt and finance, and this will get more into directly our work with the HAF program here. Anybody who has any threat to their income, we want to connect with an attorney. If there's any creditor actions, and primarily if there's any threat to home ownership and your mortgage payments, you might qualify for and benefit from the assistance of a Chapter 7 or Chapter 13 filing. And so we have statewide clinics and direct representation to ensure that anybody who might benefit from a bankruptcy filing can get that accomplished. And then finally, my program, housing, as Joe alluded to, our primary focus with low-income Nebraskans has primarily been in the renting and with the tenants. And we have worked with NIFA in recent years because of the existence of the emergency rental assistance program. There has been a tremendous need to connect people who come to an attorneys when they're threatened with an eviction to get that rental assistance. And a lot of the people who are going to the rental assistance still need an attorney because the threat of eviction is so soon, and the money itself might not stop an eviction from going forward. So we've been in collaboration to ensure that anybody who really should not be evicted, because we have that rental assistance available, has both the access to our legal services to keep them out of court, or if they're in court, have that case resolved to the client's satisfaction. And if we have clients who really just need the money, and that's the only real impediment to keeping us from having a successful defense of their eviction, making sure that we have access to that rental assistance as soon as possible. So we've been doing that for years. And then of course, here in 2022, the program, HAF, went live to benefit the low-income homeowners. That's still an important population for Legal Aid Nebraska and our housing unit. One thing we have really tried to target in recent years, and it's been a tremendous boon to have this HAF program now, are the tax sale foreclosure cases. So many of our low-income homeowners, they are elderly and or disabled, perhaps like a combination of the both. And they might own their homes outright, not even have that mortgage payments, but they are delinquent on their taxes because they're either confused, have experienced some kind of financial hardship, and have not gotten current, and also don't understand their eligibility for the homestead exemption, another program that we try to help our clientele access and benefit from. So a lot of our clients have needlessly lost their homes in these tax sale foreclosure cases, and we've spent years litigating these cases in both the district courts across the state and our state Supreme Court. And we're even trying to petition, we have actually petitioned the US Supreme Court in an effort to have these cases heard, because we think what's happening is unconstitutional, with individuals losing not just their homes, but the equity in the homes, simply because they have fallen several thousand behind in property taxes. They can lose upwards of $100,000 in equity in homes that they have owned for really their entire lives. And we've had dozens of clients lose their homes who are not losing their homes currently because of this program, because we can connect our clients to the HAF money, and individuals who have started with applying for a Nebraska HAF get connected with Legal Aid Nebraska attorney if the money itself is coming relatively late in the process, and if there's perhaps a threat to judicial foreclosure, or just the right to redeem is running out and they need some legal assistance. Essentially what has become laws in Nebraska that have just wiped clean generational homes has stopped in its tracks, because we've been able to connect people, and HAF has been able to help so many of these individuals. So that's been great. The other ways in which we can help, I think Apollo alluded to when she was explaining the program, when they screen applicants, a lot of questions are asked to see if individuals who are applying with HAF, if they would benefit from that legal assistance because they have title clearing issues, perhaps they need to probate an estate, they have liens on the property, they're lingering still. And HAF wants an attorney to perhaps look at those issues and get with these individuals to see if we need to go to county court or in any way file anything in the county in order to clear up the issues with respect to the names on the deed. Probably the biggest issue, though, as Paul alluded to, goes to that debt and financing unit. And this is more what Sam, of course, was talking about in her discussion, which is more with the financing and the mortgage, and really the need for bankruptcy. Both applicants for the HAF funds might already be in bankruptcy, and that would make start a referral to Legal Aid Nebraska, so there are consumer attorneys can get with the attorneys representing the clients in the bankruptcy. A lot of the lenders need to have certain documents signed to ensure that the trustee is acknowledging the fact that this money is going to benefit the lender and not be held in trust while the bankruptcy is going forward. Other clients may need to be in bankruptcy and they don't know whether or not that's right for them. Sometimes those individuals start with us through our normal process of screening somebody for whether or not they're eligible for and benefit from either a Chapter 7 or will be relevant for foreclosure prevention, a Chapter 13. And then we're connecting our individuals to the HAF money, as opposed to the referrals coming from HAF to Legal Aid Nebraska. But a lot of overlap exists with our client population who are in the bankruptcy and the individuals who are coming to HAF, perhaps in bankruptcy or considering bankruptcy being beneficial to them. That is where these individuals benefit from talking to a Legal Aid Nebraska attorney, perhaps to coordinate or consult with their own attorneys, or to file the bankruptcies in-house here in Legal Aid Nebraska. So those are the main issues I think that we are been working on. I would also note that we also try to do a lot of outreach at Legal Aid Nebraska whenever we are talking to individuals to advertise our services, to direct them to the HAF program as well. What we have often just really had the Chapter 13s as our final line of defense for individuals who are under threat for foreclosure. We can probably stop that from even being a necessity because of the HAF program. And that's been a real benefit to really keep our numbers down as to how many bankruptcies we have to be filing in a given year. That's really decreased here in 2022 because of the existence of so much COVID relief being available to our client population. We've really seen, not just on our end, but in the bankruptcy filings, that impact, and that's been tremendous. And I think Sam alluded to the fact that not only are we focusing on just issues of title, liens, bankruptcy, but our other areas of overlap, the legal needs of our clients and these clients needing the HAF money. In the realm of domestic violence, we have individuals who have been in marriages and they need to get out of those marriages due to DV, and at the same time try to secure their home while they have one of the sources of income in the household being removed because of the protection order. That relates to an overlap between our interest in servicing the needs of domestic violence survivors and benefiting from the HAF program. And with income and benefits, Sam alluded to, we have individuals who don't have earned income needing Social Security benefits, some of them applying for and going through the year-plus long process of trying to get Social Security benefits. And sometimes they benefit from talking to one of our Social Security attorneys, or just having one of our Social Security attorneys coordinate with their own representatives, just so that we have the necessary information, and HAF has the necessary information to determine eligibility and a general idea of people's status and their income and their basic, sustainability to keep their homes even after they benefit from the HAF program. But no matter what, the main thing is ensuring that anybody who is low income, under threat of loss of housing, has access to an attorney. We want to make sure that we've got an open door, and it's been great to access clients that we have not before because they are trying to get the HAF funds. And similarly, our Legal Aid Nebraska clients being sent and us working with and helping them apply for the HAF program when we have clients that we know will be eligible for and benefit for that money. It's been I believe, very mutually beneficial relationship, and has ensured that all legal barriers that certain people might have to accessing this money that would otherwise help them keep their homes, that there should be no impediment for anybody who should qualify for and would otherwise be able to keep their homes, but for access to this HAF money. We want to remove those legal barriers and ensure they're getting adequate legal advice and assistance. So I want to make sure we've got the time. I know I see the chat number going up, so I assume there are some questions available from the group.
I did want to
all of those messages are from John.
Oh, okay. Oh.
Joe, can I interrupt for 1 second?
Yes.
Thank you. I did want to say a couple of things that one thing I left out of their presentation that is a common question is this money doesn't have to be repaid. It is grant money under ARPA. So nobody would receive any kind of 1099 debt relief form. It doesn't have to be repaid. There's no stipulations, no strings attached. It really is just going to their lenders to help them be brought current. And then the second thing I wanted to say after just hearing Sam and Scott talk is that I think we're all really invested in everybody's application that we've touched. And I can say 100% that we haven't had anybody lose their home. And we've had people that have foreclosures in a week, and we've stopped those and been able to make payments. Or we've had people whose house is going to auction in 3 days, and we've been able to stop those. We've had people tax sales so old, years and years and years, that we've been able to pay for and keep them in their homes. So we do take immediate action in any way we can. So thank you guys for helping those. Scott gets to talk to all the attorneys and saves me from doing that, thankfully. And Sam, like she said, they have a lot of relationships with existing lenders that NHAF is partnered with, and they are more than willing to ask, like, hey, if HAF pays for this, can we do a loan mod for the remaining? So that is definitely something that I rely on them to have a conversation about, and everything's been successful. Nobody's lost their home. And I tell many applicants that call me and they're like, is this a scam? Is this true? This is taking forever. Like, are you sure I'm not going to lose my home? But I can always say it's never happened. So thank you guys.
All right, we just had our question roll in. What is the criteria for the 6-month future payments?
The criteria is that, well, currently today is that they have to be past due. So they have to receive the reinstatement assistance in order to get the payment assistance. But like I mentioned before, we are opening up the doors to those that have deferred balances. So if they have a deferred balance and aren't past due, we'll pay those up to 6 months. There is a process in the middle about that 3-month mark where we are asking people to self-certify if their income has changed or not, just to kind of hold some accountability and make sure that we're not going over those income threshold guidelines. But really the lender just tells us once they're brought current, this is their monthly payment going forward. They also update me every month if there's been escrow changes and their payments have fluctuated so that the system can update and correct the payment going forward. So really right now, just the reinstatement assistance is the requirement. But again, those changes of making that go away for the deferred balance purpose should happen within the next 30 days or so.
Okay, I know you mentioned income requirements that we have for the program, and that's based on household size and the county of residence. And I know that Legal Aid of Nebraska also has income requirements for working with people. Scott, can you talk about that a little bit?
So yeah, we have typical income requirements as an LSC, Legal Services Corporation funded organization. Generally, the cap is 200% federal poverty lines. That's when we can start doing the spend down. We can't even do the spend down 200%. But with our agreement with our referrals on the HAF program, we can adjust our income eligibility. So as long as they are HAF eligible, that would be sufficient. With respect to our income guidelines, it's the funding that ties into whether or not we can help people at certain caps or not. We have other exceptions as well. If you're elderly is a big one, anybody over the age of 60, we have greater leeway with respect to our income caps. So in this program, the main thing is if you're NHAF eligible, you will be eligible with that referral for us to do our services per the NHAF referral.
Perfect. Sam, you're talking about what you do. And you're talking about what can be done and I guess best case scenarios. And if you're able to help a person get funds from the Homeowner Assistance Fund, what is the best order for getting a loan modification in there? Does the loan modification preclude the future payments, or I guess maybe it did until recent changes, or would they want to get a loan mod and then get the future payments, or get the future payments first, then get the loan mod? What best gets people into a sustainable position?
Yeah, and that is the question. And that's why it's so important that people talk to a counselor first, because it is all about future affordability. If HAF comes in and pays the arrearage and then they turn around and can't afford the mortgage anyway, that wasn't good for anybody. So that's where a modification can be really powerful, because it's going to, in many cases, lower that future payment. But again, the best scenario is if you can work a half, sort of a partial pay, and then overlay it with a modification. But then you've got to drill down to what the servicer rules are, because every servicer is different and what they're going to consider for a mod and what their criteria are. So it is a lot of back and forth. And as I alluded to before, in many states, this is not possible because they just don't have somebody as responsive on their HAF teams. Their HAF programs are not run as well as Nebraska's, and Impala is just amazing at getting back to us. And really, I mean, I'm always amazed. We're on weekly meetings with Impala, and she will remember every single case, every single person that's applied, and what their situation is, and it's honestly amazing. But we've got that luxury here in Nebraska, where other states trying to overlay your modification, your HAF, is nearly impossible. But it's always sort of dependent upon, again, the person's budget, their future income, and who their servicer is. If you're looking like at a FHA loan or a VA loan, they are, I wouldn't say easy to work with, but they have been told work with trying to overlay HAFs with this where possible. So those kind of loans are a little bit different. But again, as Impala pointed out, it's our biggest lenders in this area are U.S. Bank, First National Bank. It's not necessarily I mean, they're easy, they're okay servicers. I'm just, everybody's situation is absolutely different.
All right, here's a question that I imagine Impala gets all the time that is short and does not have an as short answer. I just got my application in. When am I getting paid?
I always tell them, we are paying your lender. We really try to stress that this money is not going to the applicant themselves. Funds are sent directly to their mortgager or the county treasurer or their HOA treasurer. In seller finance case, it's whoever that seller happens to be that the money is going to them. But the process theoretically should take anywhere from 0 to 30 days. And that's assuming that we have a 100% complete application. That way we have a first round of review, and then it goes to a quality check, and then it goes to an underwriting review. And then the biggest part is after that happens, and that just takes, a handful of business days, but it's sending this communication out to a lender. So we do this via a CDF process, which is a common data file, and that happens kind of behind the scenes, and it's all through an SFTP site for the most part, unless I've had some lenders say their like IT firewall, it won't allow them to have this kind of software. We'll do secure email, but basically it's sending these requests and TPAs that are signed by the applicant saying, hey, these people are approved, we need this information back. And that's kind of where the biggest holdup is these lenders giving us the information we need back in order to schedule payments. And it's for a variety of reasons. They're super backlogged, especially those really big servicers like US Bank and Wells Fargo, and Rocket Mortgage is another one. They just have all 50 states, Puerto Rico, all the tribal entities just like kind of slamming them right now. And everybody's HAF program kind of opened up between the first of the year and now. So there's just a huge demand for responses back from them. But as soon as we hear back, I usually try to get payments scheduled that same day. And I give our state accounting department about a week to get those payments out, just so that there's no errors due to rushing or anything like that. So that whole process, we'd like to take a week, or a month, but it doesn't typically happen because the average servicer, depending on who they are and how big they are, probably get back to me. That's hard to say. I have some really, really good ones like Westgate Bank and First National Bank. They're like the same day. And then I have other ones that it's been like 90 days, and we do our best to follow up with them weekly. We do what we can. And then once those payments are sent, they're set in bulk payments. So for example, I'll approve 20 people and the payment for like $100,000 will go straight to the lender. But then it's on the lender also to take those funds and divvy them up to whoever they need to go to. And that could take a couple days also, especially if they're constantly getting deposits state by state. So there's a variety. It's not like you said, it's not a short answer. It's a really long answer that a lot of people don't like to hear. But the end result is it gets paid, you're brought current, your fees are taken care of, depending on how banks even apply the payment. They're supposed to go off the effective date that I give them. So that should waive or erase any potential credit reporting that happened or late fees or anything else. But it is a process. But I have people at the very end, they're like, thank you for just telling me to trust the process, trust the process.
Thank you. We haven't had any more questions run through since then, but there was one that came through early on, and John answered that offline since it was kind of hyper specific, but I think we can kind of touch into the gist of that a little bit. Somebody said that they were approaching getting behind on their mortgage and their cosigner paid, so they wouldn't affect that cosigner's credit score. And they kind of asked why the program doesn't help me in my situation. And as far as, my thought is that, like the emergency rental assistance program is to make sure landlords get paid so you don't get evicted, the homeowner assistance fund makes sure that your lender gets paid so you don't get kicked out of your home, so you don't get foreclosed upon. And that's kind of the purpose of the cosigner. And I don't know what other avenues you think that this person might have. They might be in a position where, based on recent changes, they might be eligible for future payments, and then they can use that time to kind of pay their cosign back. I don't know if Sam or Scott have any ideas for this sort of scenario.
When I read through this message, it comes to my mind that the Treasury guidance says, like Joe said, it's to help with not getting displaced, not foreclosing, not defaulting, not being past due, but it doesn't necessarily say like to help make sure your credit score doesn't get affected. And it sounds really blunt, but I mean, it's to keep you in your home essentially. And some of those other things are just consequences of not paying your mortgage. But, you know, like I said, if I send a payment with a certain effective date, that could essentially take care of that. That's always good. The other thing is the program is designed for helping those first that are past due, and you're applying for this assistance because you're saying that you're having difficulty making your mortgage payment. And when I read this, I kind of think like, are you actually having difficulty because your cosigner is paying it? That's kind of saying that you don't need the assistance if somebody's paying it, but I can definitely read between the lines and see what's going on here. That's not something that's normal for this particular person.
Oh yeah, the owner themselves kind of needs the assistance. They just have somebody else they owe money to now.
Yeah. I've also had people say that too. So hopefully this future payment will help alleviate 6 months of not having to pay their mortgage, so that those types of homeowners can focus on other bills that might have been forsaken.
Gotcha.
Also, I mean, if they're getting behind on other bills, I also said that we're going to open up to utilities and internet. So more assistance to come so that people can start paying maybe credit card debt or something that they might have. Student loans. Mine are coming back due next month too, so it's on my radar.
All right, well, we are out of questions.
I do have one thing. Sorry. A common question I get, and it's actually recently coming across every day, is can they reapply? And I did get clarification that homeowners are allowed to reapply. If they've been approved and are reapplying again, it will be an automatic referral to a housing counselor, because that was basically saying that you're not sustainable. So you get more referrals, Sam.
Excellent.
Secondly, as long as they're keeping it under that new aggregate amount of $40, they can have as much assistance as they want or need.
All right. I was just going to ask if anybody had any ending thoughts they wanted to share, something that you may have thought of since presenting. And Paula just covered that. Scott or Sam, have anything for us? Last second pearls of wisdom.
No, I mean, other than I can't reiterate enough what a great job NHAF and particularly Impala does with running this program. We're super lucky here in Nebraska because it's a different kind of a show in a lot of other states.
Yeah, I wanted to second Sam's words as well. I mean, Impala does a great job of keeping everybody connected and communicating with everybody, so that, you know, the wheels are constantly turning on all of these many applicants. Nothing is just lingering for too long.
Impala's done a lot of good work on the program. Our entire home ownership team has put in a lot of time as well, just reviewing all those, I guess doing those tier 2 reviews to keep these moving along and help as many people as possible. All right, that takes care of everything I think we wanted to talk about. So that completes this installment of Webinar Wednesdays. I'd like to thank everybody for attending, especially today's presenters. This webinar was recorded, and along with all of our previous webinars, is available on our YouTube channel at NHAF Housing. You can find a link there or on our website, NHAF.org, under Community Development Training and Webinars. Thanks again, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Bye.